there's different ways of kind of reporting or showing these reports. So some of them you might say, when I say report, everyone kind of thinks, oh, pie chart, some data, and that's what I always think anyway. I'm going to show you some reports which you might not realize are reports, but they are in effect still a report. For example, the opportunities page is effectively still a report. You can still run queries from it and find certain opportunities that meet certain criteria. You can analyze the information, which makes it a report. So we're going to see some areas I'm going to focus on more when I know that you will use them. There's other areas I'm just going to touch on because they're very specific to certain users and depending on how they use the system. So if you do want me to kind of clarify anything like that, usually when I'm screen sharing, I sometimes hear a ping, but sometimes I don't. So feel free just jump in there and just ask the question. I'm quite happy if you just mute your mic and just ask the question. It's no problem. If it becomes a problem, maybe we'll change it later on, but I think it should be fine. I've got too many on this session. Okay. Right. We're going to start with the search filters on the Smart Views page. So if I share my screen. Okay. So there's a number of pages within the system which are laid out the same way. And all the functionality is laid out the same way. So once you learn the layout of one of the pages, then you kind of know the layout for all the other pages. And this is between the volunteers page, volunteer search page. I've just gone to here. And the opportunities search page and the provider search page. They're all laid out in exactly the same way. Okay. Now they are effectively a form of report because we can query the information, we can analyze the information. They all start with this Smart Views feature at the top here. Okay, now this is really powerful if you're not aware of it. It allows you to filter the results using the filters down the left-hand side here. Okay. And there's loads of really interesting filters which we're going to come on to shortly. And you can also, as well as actually filtering results, you can create kind of combinations. So you can say, show me, in this example, every volunteer where the age, is, say, more than, age is more than 21. And then you might say where the, I don't know, the gender is male, for example. Okay, so it's finding a combination of people who are both over 21 and male, straightforward. What about if you said I wanted people from certain geographical areas? And you say, well, I could do that. So if I go down here and I say go to city, I want people from, and this is made up data, obviously. So someone from Dundee, but also I want people from Peru. That'd be a weird mix, wouldn't it? Dundee and Peru. Okay. Well, if I leave it like this, it's actually not going to bring up anybody. Okay. Why isn't it going to bring up anybody? Okay, I'm going to pick on somebody. Oh, who am I going to pick on? Who am I going to pick on? Kirsty, because she's looking at me. Who do you reckon, Kirsty? Do you think of any reason why? That page is going to jump away, isn't it? Any reasons why when I selected the city and I chose Dundee, then I chose another city and it was Peru, why would this bring up nobody?
You've got it on and, so it's trying to match both of them.
Bingo, absolutely right, yeah. Got it on and. So so you have to change this here to match all, to match any. So just keep that in mind, because using this combination, it's really powerful tool. Like you can say, I want to know which volunteers are from this socially deprived areas. Well, in that case, then, if you just wanted it as a one-off report, you could go down to postcodes even, and you could say, show me volunteers where the postcode is CV6, starts with CV6, and also where the postcode starts with CV7, for example. And then I could say match any, which means it's dragging me all volunteers whose postcodes start with CV6 or CV7. Okay, so it's good for like your geographical ones. And then there's other ones where you don't want it to be match any, you want it to be match all. Obviously, like I want to know people who are over 21 and male, for example. Okay, so we can create these some really powerful queries with this. Now, once we've got a query that we're interested in, we can actually, so say if this was socially deprived areas, I can actually save the filters over here just by clicking on the save button. So when you click on the save button here, I can type in socially deprived areas, click on save, and now it's saved in there. So when I go down to socially deprived areas in future, so if I jump onto this page in future, close all that down. If I go down to socially deprived areas, I need to refresh the page. There we go. It's brought up straight up again there. Okay. So that's a quick way of kind of you creating these queries and you're saving them in your drop down list here. You can even specify if you want to on using the edit function which ones are the default open up by default. What that means is if you say every time I go to the volunteer search page, I don't want it to open up and list me every volunteer. I want it to open up with certain volunteers. Maybe it's only active volunteers. Maybe it's only volunteers who have registered in the last month or something like that. You can set that to default there. Okay, which means that it will always open up with those queries at the top. Okay, spare me 1 second. Someone's trying to get in.
Steve, is there any chance you could zoom in on your screen slightly? I'm finding it quite hard to see all the information whilst it's on Google.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Thank you.
No, one thing is every time I jump out into the meeting, I jump back into it, I realise it seems to log me out, which is annoying. I'll try and zoom in on this here. So.
Steve, where is that default button? You said we could.
If you click on the edit button, in the corner up here, okay, and then you're choosing another default bit here. You're choosing which one it opens up as default.
Okay.
Or you can select no default if you just want it to open up the normal way.
The one next to saved filters.
Yeah, can you see my screen here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. The edit button. Yeah, next to save filters.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Thank you.
I'm sorry. No worries. Okay. So there's some really powerful filters in here. So obviously we know we can create the different combinations of match all and match any. We know we can save them now, and we can even set them as defaults. Okay. So I can't think of many reasons why people wouldn't have a number of these save filters in here because it's such a useful thing. In terms of the different types of filters, there's some really useful ones. Ones I tend to see people using quite a lot. Things are like the date the volunteers last logged in. Date a volunteer last logged in. This is going to require a little bit of mental arithmetic in trying to picture this. So if we say, I want to see which volunteers haven't logged in for 6 months, okay, then we can use a date last logged in option here. And we can say, show me volunteers where the date they last logged in, the last time they logged in was before 6 months ago. Okay. And that's going to bring up all volunteers that haven't logged in for 6 months. Okay. And then I can select all and I can email them. Okay. And I could put in information. I notice you haven't engaged with the system. You know, we've got some new exciting opportunities, blah, 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 blah. Okay. You might even put them in a group if you want to and send them a bulk email. Put them in a group, send them a bulk email. If you want to do a really fancy email. For those of you who remember the communications training and the bulk emails, you can kind of select a load of opportunities and say, oh, you might be interested in these. And it gives them hyperlinks and all embedded within the email. So yeah, date the last logged in is a really useful one. What are the ones I see people using? Number of opportunities. Another one I see people using. So volunteers, how many volunteers have joined this number of opportunities or have joined more than one opportunity? That kind of thing. I also see category, join categories. So you might say, well, I want to know which volunteers have joined any opportunity which is categorized as meet and greet, for example. I don't know if there's any. And it's going to bring up all volunteers who have been interested in this area of volunteering, who have joined opportunities in this area of volunteering. Okay. Or they've joined an opportunity categorized as meet and greet, essentially. Obviously, your categories may be different. So that's another way of saying, okay, I know what kind of who I want to communicate with, volunteers in this area, and I know this area is this category within my system. So I want to just find everyone who's ever joined any opportunities in that category, and then I can email them, and then I'm sending a communication to the people I want to send a communication to. Makes sense. You've also got custom fields on here as well. Okay, so I see a lot of people using the custom fields. Usually things like t-shirt sizes. If it's one thing you collect is t-shirt sizes, then they'll say, show me how many, I need to order them new t-shirts. So how many people are small, and they can figure out how many they need to buy for the next batch of t-shirts. Okay. When it comes down to this bit down here, okay, once you've got your results, you can always download the results to an Excel spreadsheet. Okay. And then you can manipulate it further if you want to. If you look on here, it's actually showing you one of 25 volunteers, okay, and it's saying show the first 100. So we're always going to see every volunteer on this system. When you get on your systems, you may have thousands of volunteers on there, and it's something you need to be aware of. When it's showing, it will say like show 1 to 100, because you've got set to show to 100, and then if you want to see the next page of results, then you're using this next and previous button, or you're saying show all. Okay. But the reason why this is important when you've got lots and lots of volunteers is if you're selecting everything on here, okay, when I select all, I am not selecting every volunteer that meets the query. I'm selecting all volunteers that are visible on this page here. Okay, so if you know that you've got a large number of volunteers in the results, make sure you show all, okay, before you select all. Otherwise, you're not going to be selecting all of them, if that makes sense. And then you send the communication or choose what action you want to do down the bottom here.
Steve, is there a reason why it's not show all by default, why it is broken down in pages?
It's load times.
Right.
I know I asked it because I've sort of wanted to do it by default. Most people, it's to do with load times, because if some people, some of our customers have got like 10,000 volunteers,
Yeah.
and they might just want to jump to this page and run a quick query. They don't want it to wait kind of 10 seconds for the page to load up, because it's trying to load up 10,000 volunteers information.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that's the reason. But yeah, I've just seen people caught out with this before. So just as long as once you know it, you're like, fine, okay. just have to be aware of it. That's all. Yeah. So that is obviously downloading results, download to Excel, which I've been through. So next thing we're going to look at is, and this same page layout is the same on all the opportunities page. Now, obviously, when we're looking at the opportunities, we've still got the smart views over the right hand side here. Okay, we've still got the filters here, but there are different filters because it's a different thing. It's not volunteers anymore; it's opportunities. But there is some really powerful filters in there also, and also on your providers page. Okay, let's get into some more of the more interesting kind of reports. So when you first
Steve,
log,
could I just ask a
sure.
question? Sorry, you showed a joined categories filter on the
volunteers
search page. Mine's empty, so it means that I'm missing something. Where are the categories bit for volunteers to join?
Yours is empty. You join the category.
Yeah. When I clicked that, it wasn't giving me any. Yeah. So is that a customized field that I need to put in somewhere?
Yeah.
It seems
you raise a support ticket, or just give us a bell after this call. Maybe wait to the end of this call. Hang on the line at the end of this call, and have a look at yours. It should.
Perfect.
I mean, all systems have categories because every opportunity is linked through to a category.
Cool.
So I'm not sure why yours isn't shown. It should be shown at least one category.
It might be something to do with the orbit system. So yeah, we'll have a little look. Thank you.
Yes, it may well be to do with that. Yes, well, I'll have a look at that and get that sorted. Okay, so next we've got the main dashboard. So what do we see when you first log into the system? What kind of reporting information do we see? Okay, we see this 4 tabs on the left-hand side. The first one is the summary tab. So this is all the things, the kind of main things the system thinks you probably want to be aware of. Opportunities for authorization, volunteers waiting for access. Okay, now these things are dependent, these boxes here that we're looking at, they're dependent on your setup of your system. Okay. If you automatically authorize opportunities, which means that, okay, once an opportunity is created, it's automatically authorized so it can go live on the system. Then obviously there's never going to be any opportunities waiting for authorization because everything's automatically authorized. So you literally won't see this box appearing. It will only show you boxes that are relevant to your system and your setup. Same for volunteers waiting for access. You may have, in the settings, you may have said, well, actually, every volunteer, as soon as they register, they have access on the system. It was quite common for volunteer centres, for example. That's usually the way that they set theirs up. In which case, this box will never appear. Okay, so it's only going to show you boxes that are relevant to your setup. But these are usually the key things. Other ones I see providers waiting for authorization. I often see in here as well. We've got chat messages since you last logged on. It's a useful thing. Again, it's a function which you may or may not use, the chat messages. For those of you who don't, chat messages is just like a little chat forum for every opportunity where it allows the volunteers on an opportunity to ask each other questions and have a conversation. And you take a waterproof clothing tomorrow. Yeah, I better do. Yeah, it looks like it might rain, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Okay, so you can see since you last logged on here. And then we got what's been happening since you last logged on. Okay, now I'd set this up nicely this morning, then I logged off and logged back on again. So now it's wiped all my activities off. They literally will show you so-and-so a person created an opportunity, so-and-so person logged in, logged out, all that kind of stuff. You'll be able to see since you last logged in. So this is the first page that opens when you log in. Okay, so showing you the things which we think are going to be most relevant to you. Okay. We then got the activity tag, which is like, say you've been on holiday or something like that, or you've just been added as an administrator. The activities tag shows you things in the last 30 days. What's happened in the last 30 days? What opportunities have been added? Volunteers have been added, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so similar kind of stuff, but for the last 30 days, not since you last logged in. Okay. Then we've got our open opportunities. Really, obviously, a very important thing. How many opportunities, not just how many opportunities do we have on the system, but how many opportunities are open? What is your volunteer offering at the moment? Okay, which is you're offering, obviously, opportunities which are open. So this is everything. So you always want to make sure that you've got enough choice out there for your volunteers. You know, if you've only got one or two opportunities, unless there's a very good reason, then that's not enough. You need to have, you know, at least kind of half a dozen opportunities open, really, to keep them going back, keep them interested. Okay. And then we've got tasks. Okay, so these are some interesting things on here. We've got suggested tasks, a task like hours to log. So opportunities when we see discrepancies between the hours login where a provider's logged hours but a volunteer hasn't, that kind of thing, or volunteers logged hours and a provider hasn't, then it will show you down here. You've got a question, I think. Someone had a ping there. If you've got a question, you can just pipe up and ask the question.
Hello, it's just me. I was just wondering, that activity tab's really useful the last 30 days. Is there any way to export that information so that I could like share it with the team and we could allocate following it up kind of thing?
Nope, but it is a very sound. Can you hear me? Yep, sorry, sound just cut off. I'll make a note of it now. Last 30 days. What are you thinking, like a Excel spreadsheet or something?
Yeah, like just like all your other reports. It'd just be good if we download all that, then I can make sure that things get followed up if they need to, or it's a good way of tracking the last 30 days.
Yeah, I'll put it to the development team and see what they say. Okay, so open opportunities we're done. Then we go down to tasks. And tasks down here, so we've got like the hours to log, opportunities that end in the next 7 days. Like there's things we have built in, like comms, which should make these people aware anyway without you having to check these things. So for example, there's the ability to, if you switch it on, which most people does, to email the provider running the opportunity a week before and tell them your opportunity is about to end. Do you want to extend it? Do you want to add more sessions, or do you want to change the end date? Okay, because if they don't, it's going to close the opportunity and it's no longer being offered to the volunteers. Okay, so this gives it just another way of highlighting that rather than waiting for them to receive the email. It highlights it to you as the administrator. Okay, these are about to end in the next 7 days, and you can have a glance through them and say, do I think they should be ending the next 7 days, Maybe I need to speak to the provider. Maybe I am the provider. Maybe I'm the administrator and provider. Low performing opportunities. So these are opportunities that haven't been viewed or joined in the last 14 days. Okay, again, a really useful window there for you. Low performance. Yep.
Steve, do we all have those like low performing options? I don't think I've ever actually looked at that tasks button.
Yeah, these are all there for everybody. Yeah.
We all have them. Okay, thank you.
Low performing providers. Yep.
Steve,
Say again.
to interrupt you as you were talking there. You know, like you said, the other one is relevant to our system setup, the first page you showed us. So it shows us what kind of is relevant to what we've got. Can the tasks page be changed at all if we wanted different tasks to show on that page, or is that kind of set as it is? That's what it shows.
They're all set, but they all include tabs. Only include tabs which are relevant for your setup. But there's some which are relevant for everybody. For example, the hours to log. If there was no hours to log, this box would just if there was no, well, there's nearly always hours.
Yes.
Look on your system, you'll see some in there. But it's some things that I know with this one here, it would hide it if there wasn't any hours to log. Opportunities that end in the next 7 days. That one's never. It's usually highly populated, that one, because you normally got quite a lot of opportunities on there, so that will never be hidden. So it does it will kind of massage them and try and show you things that you think are most relevant and hide things that you think are not relevant. But yeah, we spoke about it before about it's something that we have looked into, and we're still looking into the ability to kind of create your own bespoke. And add these boxes, that you think, well, this is actually what I'm interested in for my system.
It's just things like we've noticed when we've been using it. It's things like if we've only had like one reference complete, it's like reminders of things like that, and things like that would be useful in kind of like a task setting. So it's almost like a reminder of things for us to do is what we've noticed. So there might be some other areas in there, but possibly.
There is something, just on you saying that, there is something actually in this summary tab, which is going to be added in the next update. It's not here yet, but it's going to be another box that appears. One of the new features, you get a bit of insight now into the next update. So in update 2.6, we've got a to-dos feature where you can add to-do lists, and you can assign them, say, oh, I need to remember to do this for this volunteer, or I need to remember to do this for this provider. And you can set to-do, or you can assign it to other people as well. You can set to-do lists, and they will appear on this summary page as well. To try to remember to do things. Oh, right, I need to get that person's background check sorted out, don't I? Or whatever it is, you can set them up as to-do lists within the system.
Oh yeah, that would be really useful, I think. Those reminders and setting that up, I think that would be really good. Thank you.
Yeah, they call it tasks. I think they're creating like tasks within the system. I think is the terminology they're going to use. So we have these tabs down here. The last one we're looking at was tasks on here, and then we've got reports. Now there's a number of reports within the system which I'm not going to go into too much detail, and it's about specific functions, and it depends. The reason I'm not going to go into them too much detail because it depends whether you use them or not. For example, meetings. You can look at the meetings page and it will show you a list of all the meetings. Okay, some past ones in here. All the meetings available on your system. Now, obviously, that's only relevant to you if you use the meetings function and you do actually create meetings for your volunteers and using the system. Which I know some of you do, but not everyone does. And that's the same for things like role applications as well. So people are using roles being like a set of things, hoops the volunteer needs to jump through before they can get onto an opportunity. Okay. And the same for references and expenses and hour trades and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to go into them, but obviously each of these pages is a form of report in itself. Okay. So next, for more general maintenance reports. So we looked at kind of things to do reports, summary information and things to do reports. Now going into like maintenance. What do you need to do just to maintain the system? One of the things you can check is, and you should probably check at least every kind of 6 months, is the email failure report. Okay, so this is showing you all the emails that were sent out from the system and all the ones that have failed. Okay, And they may have failed for different reasons. Okay. But what we can see in here is we can identify what the reason is. And it may be a case of speaking to that particular person and saying, there's a problem with your email account because of X, Y, and Z. Now on this email failure report, no, that wrong way around, email failure report, you can use, obviously you've got filters here, you can search by name. If there's a particular person who said, I've not received this email, then one of the places you can go is go to this page and you can search by name here. It tells us who the volunteer is though. It tells us when the email was sent. It tells us why it failed. So whether it was a hard bounce, a reject, or a soft bounce is the other one, which is not in here. There's no soft bounces. No. But you may see soft bounce in here. Basically, the main difference between these is hard bounce means, and this is the same terminology which is used by any email server or any email system across the world. So when you say an email is hard bounce or soft bounce, it's not specific to TeamKinetic. You can say it to any person aware of IT, and they will understand. Certainly, your IT team will understand what you mean by it. So a hard bounce means that it's completely rejected right from the off. Maybe the email address doesn't even exist. That's the kind of hard bounce. Okay. Then you've got soft bounces and rejects, which are similar, and it's more of a case of, oh yeah, the email address does exist, but there's something in the content of the email that it doesn't like. So it said, there's too many people copied into this. I'm not sure about this. And it's a soft bounce. It's saying, not for now. We'll accept emails from you, but not this particular email. Okay. Such a hard bounce in your soft bounces. These columns over here, these just tell you whether they've opted into these certain things, the chat messages, if that particular volunteer has opted into these certain, because they can opt in and out of certain communications within the system. Then we've got opportunity maintenance. Okay, so when we go to our opportunities list page here, okay, we can say, show me opportunities. Okay, there's some key filters we can use down here to help maintain the opportunities and make sure we're aware of what's happening. There's ones I've touched on before, like opportunities where the end date is before, is before maybe a month's time. Okay, and I can search for that. And that's going to show me every opportunity where it's going to end in the next month. Okay. But there's lots that have ended already. Okay. So I also want to know opportunities where the status is open. So I'm finding open opportunities that are ending in the next month, okay, which is one. So I know this opportunity will end in the next month. It's a useful way, and it's a useful kind of exercise to do, again, just to make sure that there's not opportunities ending that you're not aware of. Other ones, pending applications, I see used on this page here. So application status. So if you change this, there shouldn't be any on this system, but if you change them to pending, then you can see which opportunities applicants waiting there. So they're applying opportunities, okay, but there's pending applicants. And then you can look at it and say, well, okay, should they be how long have they been pending for? What's happened there? Okay, is the provider on the ball? Are they not monitoring that opportunity? So you can ask yourself some questions regarding the applications process. Search tags as well is another one that I see used quite a bit. So when you say, show me all opportunities that are tagged with this particular tag word, okay, like football, for example. Okay. It brings up any one opportunity that's tagged with that particular word. So these filters here act as a very powerful form of report as well. Okay. Has anyone used a day schedule report? Can you put your hands up if you've used a day schedule report? That's at least one person. Good. So a day schedule report gives you like a quick snapshot of what's happening in the next X days. Okay. So it allows you to day schedule report, is that one? Okay, so it will show you, regardless of what opportunity, it will show you all opportunities essentially. So there's different opportunities appearing here, and it will show you how many volunteers are on that opportunity, compared to the maximum volunteers are. I think it's a good like Monday morning exercise to do. open it up. Okay, oh yeah, I've got those opportunities happening this week. Are they all set up right? They've got enough volunteers to run that event over there. So it's a good Monday morning exercise. The person who put their hand up, what do you use it for, the day schedule? Is there any other reasons or that you use that particular page? Interesting.
I use it for quite a lot of things, to be honest. So if I need to check who's volunteering that week, just for example, yesterday, I had one of our rangers call in sick, so I needed to go on the task that was due for the next day. So I literally just went on the day schedule, looked at the task, went into the opportunity and contacted all those volunteers to let them know it had been cancelled at the last minute. So that was really helpful, because I can just literally just see obviously what's coming up that week. So that's really good for like things like staff sickness or last minute changes. Like just for example, in our park, you know, if there's really bad weather, we could see what events are coming up and say, sorry, you know, that there's going to be a storm that day, we're going to cancel that event or that opportunity. Yeah, so it's really useful for that. Also double checking my work, so because you can see how many slots you've put against each thing, so I'll go through and sort of check that, right, I have put 10 slots for that Friday, or you know, or and just have a quick look and see if any of them are full yet and things like that. So yeah, I use it a lot.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I know a lot of people it's quite a popular page. A couple of things there I hadn't thought about, to be honest with you, so thanks for that, it's appreciated. So yeah, so very useful page, your day schedule report, and most of you should be using it at least once a week. We've also got the you can choose, obviously in the day schedule report, you can choose things like specific opportunities. By default it will just show you everything, but if you want to specify specific opportunities, you can do. For those of you who are thinking what are slots here, slots are like, if you got an opportunity that this opportunity here takes place at 10 o'clock on Friday, means that there's a maximum of 10 volunteers on that session. So it's what's the maximum compared to how many volunteers could potentially be on. So this is 10 of 10 slots available, which means that there's no volunteers on this session. Obviously, do the math. Okay, so that's what your slots are in your day schedule report. Next, we're going to go to the more kind of reporting and analysis library. This is probably more what you thought we're going to be dealing with today. They'll be all different, all our forms of reports. This is like a reporting page, you'd probably expect to see one. So what do we get on here? We get loads of stuff on here. There's loads of interesting stats. Okay. These are, first we've got our main stats here, your main KPIs. How many volunteers have registered? How many opportunities are on the system? Confirmed hours, which means like how many provider logged hours they are. They've been confirmed by the providers. How many active volunteers? How many volunteers have been converted, which means that not only have they registered, they've gone on to join at least one opportunity, and how many of those have gone to log hours as well, and how many have joined multiple opportunities. And we can do exactly the same here. It's exactly the same stats down here. Okay, just that you can do it down here. You can organize by date range. Show me how many registrations between this date range, for example. Okay. Things I see people get caught out with sometimes on this page is understanding the definitions of, well, you know what converted is? I explained what that was. It means that not only did they register, they were converted, i.e. they converted and joined at least one opportunity. Active is what I often see misdefined. That's the wrong word. You know what I mean? People get the wrong end of the stick with it. Active is the same throughout the system. So if you say that a volunteer has been active, it means that the volunteer is either on a session. So if you said it as volunteer been active in 2025, it means that within the year of 2025, they've either been on a session or for a flexible opportunity. We don't have any sessions, so we have to look at the when they logged their hours on flexible opportunities. So if either they joined a session in 2025 or they logged out on a flexible opportunity, they logged hours in 2025, well, it will define them as being active in 2025. Okay. So whenever you see the word active, and you will see it on a few different pages, that's what it always means. That's the only way we know, really, like you say, that they've actually been busy. Just the fact the thing is with the flexible opportunities is because they can just join a flexible opportunity and it might go on for 2 years, then we can't really honestly say, oh yes, they've been active on that, because that 2-year period, I'm assuming that they've been there every single week. That's probably unlikely. So we have to look at the logged hours for those flexible opportunities.
So Steve, you've also got something saying with logged hours.
Number of percentage of volunteers have joined a session or logged hours on a flexible op. Oh, sorry, with logged hours over here.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is to do with volunteers that have not only registered, but and not only converted and joined an opportunity, but they've also logged hours on that opportunity that they've joined.
Okay, so I've got a lot of flexible opportunities, and I'm not sure how often they all log hours. So if I've got somebody on a flexible opportunity that logs at 1 hour in 2025, does that mean they're active throughout 2025?
Yes, if you're running the report that says who's active.
If they hadn't logged any hours in 2024 and I was running a report on active volunteers,
they wouldn't appear, because the system has no way of knowing, like say, because flexible opportunities can roll on for years.
Yeah.
But it has no way of knowing that, oh, what is, when they actually engage with the volunteering. The only way it knows is if either the volunteer or provider has logged some hours.
And that has to be logging an hour every calendar year.
Yeah, if you wanted to show them active, yeah, you have to show logging an hour, at least 1 hour every calendar year would bring up, yes, this person.
I want to know what the data, what the system brings up. But yes, okay, thank you.
No worries. It can be a bit of a, it's the word active. I've said it before, because I see it quite a lot in custom reports, people who have custom report requests, like they want us to build a specific report from. And I always see at the top and it says like, oh, people who've been active within this. And it's always like, what do you mean? What do you mean by active? And I explain our definition of active, which is usually suffice. But yeah, with all these things, it kind of dabbles in the detail of what it sounds easy, doesn't it? Been active, and you're like, well, how would the system know it's been active? It's not there with eyes watching the person doing volunteering on the ground. So how does it know if someone's been active?
Another quick question on that that area. So we've got quite a higher number with logged hours compared to active. What would be going on there?
You're quite a high number of logged hours compared to active. Which one are you talking about here then? Which?
So our logged hours with logged hours is 261, but then active it's 174. So will that be because maybe like a provider's logging hours rather than someone logging into the system?
I think so. Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, I'm not sure without looking at it. It's hard to know without looking at the actual data myself. I don't really want to jump onto your system for obvious reasons. So I'm going to hold on at the end and I'll have a look when we stop recording.
Yeah.
I'll have a look at
the
system. Okay. So your quick stats here. Quick KPIs, usually what the powers that be are after, and then you can do it by date range down here. We have your application, application analytics here. Okay, so this is, I can zoom into one, it might make a bit more sense. Obviously it's demo data, but this shows you how many people are actually looking at your system as a whole. Okay, so how many people have visited your system as a whole? Okay, so if you go out there and do a big emailing shot to 10,000 people telling them about your new volunteer service, or you go and drive a van around with, with a big poster on the side, or whatever your promoting marketing method is, then you can measure the success of that marketing by looking at your application analytics. Say, well, how many people actually went on the site after we did that big marketing exercise? Okay. You can zoom in as well, just by clicking, you can zoom into certain areas and hover the mouse over. Okay. You also get this against each opportunity, which I'll come on to shortly. So you can see exactly, not people who's landed on your system, but people who have looked at that specific opportunity. Be really powerful reports, those. Quarterly reports, straightforward, loads of stats to do with, usually academic organizations can be interested in the quarterly reports.
Sorry, Steve, how can we find out about who looks at all individual opportunities? Where's that?
I'll tell you in a second. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So, okay, quarterly reports. Then we've got provider reports, obviously specific to your provider makeup. how many are registered, how many got access on the system, how many got opportunities, blah, 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 blah. Opportunities reports. There's an interesting one on here I like, which is, although you can see, one of them you can see opportunities by category. Once this one loads up, there we go, which makes sure that you're getting a nice spread of opportunities. So here they've got 50% of the opportunities are in dementia support. So you might say, you know what, most of our volunteers are not specifically interested in that area. So let's not try and create more dementia support opportunities. Let's try and get some other types and more varied types of opportunities on there. Yeah. So it gives you a better understanding of the kind of spread and the types of your opportunities that you're offering. But this one here is interesting, website searches. Okay. So this shows you what people are actually typing into the search bar. So what shows you what volunteers are typing into the search bar. Okay, so when they go to search for opportunities, they can either click on the search button and scroll down the page, or they can type actual search words in. Now, if they type search words in, it records it. Yeah, we record it. Okay, and it will appear on here. It will show you the top 20. Okay. Why would that be important? Why would that be useful, do you think? Someone want to hedge a guess?
I mean, it would be great to find out what opportunities people are consistently wanting. You know, if they're always looking for gardening and you only got 5% gardening, and you realise that you've got 200 people looking at your site, but only 5 people registering, you need to open up more gardening opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really useful. I've spoken to the development team about making this more, you know, more dominant in terms of the UX UI, the layout of this, because I think it's a really useful. People don't realize how useful that is. So it's almost like closing the loop, because you're creating this offer to volunteers. All the volunteers register on your system. You create this offer and you put these opportunities on there. That's what you're offering to the volunteers. Then this thing tells you actually what the volunteers are interested in, even if you're not offering it. You know, it's just like running a shop, isn't it? And then you're asking people who are coming in the shop what they're interested in. They're telling you, here's a list of things that you may not even sell in here, but here's what I want to buy. And then you can make that judgment call of, okay, maybe we should sell these things, or maybe we should offer these types of opportunities. Now, sometimes you might say gardening. Have we got any gardening opportunities on here? You say, no, we haven't. Okay, well, maybe we could add some gardening ones on there. There's certainly a couple of providers I know who probably could do with some volunteer gardeners. Friends of the Park down the road there, and that tennis club down the road there. Okay, I'll have a chat with them and let them know. Okay. Or you might say, is there any gardening opportunities on there? You say, yeah, there is. Well, if they type in gardening, will that opportunity come up? Well, if the volunteer types in gardening and gardening isn't in the name of the opportunity, and it's not tagged with the word gardening, then the system will not bring up that gardening opportunity. Okay. So it tells me that I need to go and re-tag that opportunity with the word gardening, because I know that's what they're typing in, and I want it to bring up that opportunity. Does that make sense? I'm not sure about that. Good. Okay, so really useful. You can download these reports to CSV, to Excel, essentially, if you want to. There's opportunities tags reports as well. There's how many opportunities and hours are logged against your actual tags, which is why I always kind of mentioned to you when we're doing the training about it's important to kind of stay on top of your tags if you can, and make sure that there's no kind of like very similar tags on there, like admin and administrator. They should really just be tagged as the same thing. You know, and it's not a problem until you come to report on it. But then you've got admin and administrator, which we all know is the same thing, but all your data's been split up because they're actually down as 2 separate tags. Okay. And you can re-tag those using the opportunity tags page here, where you can actually regroup them and clean them up. Okay. So another thing on here that is looking at the volunteers, here, and giving you the chance to say, well, it's got ethnicities on here, genders, all that kind of stuff. is my current volunteering program, is it reflective of society? Is it reflective of my actual community around here? So that's when your ethnicities, obviously this is all dummy data, so don't worry about these, but this is where your ethnicities and your genders and your age breakup and this, that and the other comes into its own. But you need to obviously have a look at your local area and get those same stats for your local area, then compare it like for like and say, well, wait there a minute, we are very different from our local community. Why is that? Why is our ethnicity makeup very different? Okay, I need to try and engage with this particular cultural groups, for example, or age groups or whatever it is. Okay, any questions over that? No. Right,
Steve,
now, yep.
Steve, when I've looked at these reports before, and when you download, so say you're looking where people volunteer, for example, what opportunities and all of that kind of thing. It seems that you can't go straight into the people that fall into those categories.
No, it's just like a high level. It just shows you the categories and the numbers, just like 2 columns.
Yeah.
The point you make though, is that something that you were looking at doing? Was it you actually?
Well, yeah. So, for example, I mean, I know you can do the other kind of filtering in the first bit that you showed.
Yeah.
But say I wanted to do a report, I wanted to look at I just want a list of all the people that volunteer in one particular opportunity, to click on that and then download it. And instead of it just saying, oh, this opportunity and these amount of people, actually have those people.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I thought, I must admit, it's crossed my mind before, Matt, whether we should go to that next step.
Yeah, rather than just having the numbers, having the actual details of those people. Because one of the reports I checked with Julie, who normally does all the reporting, I said, is there any specific, I told her I was joining this today, because our chief exec has asked us about asylum seekers and how many people we have as asylum seekers. So I said to Julie, is that something we can record? Because they're normally quite, they don't, they tell us that's their situation when we interview them to have them as a volunteer. And she said, just to find out if that's something, do you believe that's the right thing to ask and record on? And then is that something we can then report on? So how many people are currently asylum seekers that volunteer for us, for example, and who are they? Yeah.
I mean, I see what you mean from this download page. I'll have a chat with them where they can download them straight from here. I mean, obviously we can, as you're aware, you can get that information from the volunteer search page if you wanted to, and that will download the list of the actual volunteers. But I can see where you're coming from in regards to this. It might be more useful if this download is exactly that, and it shows the exact makeup rather than showing like male, female with 2 and 2 next to it. Actual show who those males and who those females were, which fell within that.
So if I wanted to see someone's training, for example, whose training is out of date, rather than see, I've got 100 people that haven't done their training, I want to see who those 100 people are and have a list of those names to be able to go, guys, these are the ones that need to do their training. Do people record things like that, like asylum seekers? Is that something you would record?
I bet they do. I've never heard of it before, in all honesty, but I bet they do. Does anyone else on this call, does anyone record anything like that? Asylum seekers? Somebody out there. Or maybe not. Maybe you are on your own.
I wouldn't, but I don't, but I would.
I will now.
This is the thing with volunteering, that it's all very black and white when it comes to paid employees. But when it comes to volunteers, nobody ever seems to know what the right thing or wrong thing is, whether it's appropriate to record on your system if somebody is an asylum seeker, the way that you would need to know if someone had additional needs or something like that.
Yeah. I think if you've got a legitimate reason for doing it, then with anything with data, GDPR always says that, you can't hold data or capture data unless there's a reason for you capturing it. You're not allowed. Okay. But as long as you have a reason and you can communicate that to somebody, say, well, we want to know this because if we know which ones are asylum seekers, then we can give them additional support, for example, when they're on opportunities. And there's a legitimate reason for you to ask that question and hold that information. The thing, from what I know about it, and I'm not the oracle about GDPR and all that kind of stuff, but that's what my understanding is. You'd be fine to do that.
So I could add that as a field then in one of my on the profile, and if they are, then click yes, and then Thanks very much.
I'm sure I have heard of it. You know what? I think I have heard of it before. I'm sure I have. I forget who it is, but I'm sure I've heard of someone else doing it, and they didn't mention there was any issues around it. But someone else.
Yeah, because when it was the riots last year, they wanted to know who the vulnerable volunteers were that we could then check in with and make sure they were okay and say, look, you know, if you don't want to go and volunteer, if you're worried about leaving the house, or if you need any help, let us know. And I just had to go from memory of people I'd interviewed and who currently volunteers for us. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Whereabouts does the system pull this data from? Because I've just had a quick look and we've randomly got like 3 different groups for white British. So is that because of how we've got the system set up somewhere, or?
Yeah, so if you look at your ethnicities and your genders and all that stuff, if you go down to your setup, so super admin option up here,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go on the left hand side, you've got gender list, ethnicity list.
Okay.
And you can change these to whatever you want, obviously. And you even got the ability over here to kind of regroup them. So if you are changing them, you can say, oh, these 2 groups, actually, we're going to change it to this group here and encompass them both. So yeah, but that's where it comes from. We don't define what the list is. It's down to yourself.
Okay.
Firstly, I think that's set by the Orbit system for the Wildlife Trusts. So I think that's Jake that needs to do it for all of us. And
right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yours is, yeah, there's some things, sorry, your Wildlife Trust. Yeah, there's some things which are locked down because they want to report on those centrally across all those systems, all your TeamKinetic systems. So if Wildlife Trust, for the people that don't know, they're in a, we call an orbit. So they're all linked together in a, it's going to be like a lot of them, 20 or so systems all linked together. But obviously if you want to report on that centrally, if I have a national report, then everyone has to have the same list of ethnicities, and everyone has to have the same list as genders, for example. Yeah, otherwise you can't report on it for obvious reasons. So we have to lock them down, and that's what we're talking about. Okay, so next I'm going to go to the opportunities page. You're asking about how you see this kind of KPI information for specific opportunities. Someone was asking before. So whenever you go to an opportunity, this one here, it's a Pickham. Click on the opportunity, takes you through to the opportunities page. And then if you just scroll down under the summary tab, you can see how many web views the opportunities had. So how many people have looked at the opportunity. Okay, and you'd see big spikes happening along here. Okay, for those of you who are thinking, well, how do you know if a volunteer's looking at it? What it means is when they've gone to the search page, the volunteers not just scroll past it, they've actually clicked on the opportunity to view more information. That's what we classify as a volunteer looking at an opportunity. And this will show you how many volunteers and over the timeline have looked at this opportunity. Okay. Very useful to see how kind of popular it is or if there's any issues with it. And then we also have the ethnicity and genders, all that same breakdown, age and all that kind of stuff, specific to volunteers who are on this opportunity. Okay. You can do the same for events as well. So if you go down to those who use events, it's actually got its own kind of separate page on the events for reporting. So if I go down to an event here, this one, Tough Mudder fundraiser. Slowing down because we're all screen sharing. Okay, and I've got activity and demographics over here. So it shows me similar kind of KPI information, views, and all that ethnicity, genders, all that stuff for people who are on this event. Now, as we know, an event, it's just a group of opportunities. So this is basically showing you reports on all volunteers who have joined any opportunity which is linked to this event.
Steve, how did you get to that page?
I'm not telling you. Go to opportunities and providers, down to event.
Oh, okay.
Then click on the event, and then you want to activity and demographics. Okay, that's the one you want to look for. Okay, marketing and comms. So we've done the opportunity search. We looked at that. Volunteers who have joined certain opportunities of certain categories. I've spoke about that. The application analytics. I've showed you that. You know how many people are looking at, how many people are actually looking at the site. So you do a big promotional drive. I spoke about the van driving past, and you're sending out emails, getting people to come to the system. You'd expect a spike in it. The only other thing we didn't cover is feedback quotes. So not quite often, but every now and again I hear about it. People from marketing who are after quotes, from their volunteers. A good way of getting those quotes is reporting feedback, and then you can say volunteer feedback, and you can search for specific words like thank you or something like that. Okay? And it'll bring up all opportunities with the word thank in it. So you can say, all right, okay, I want to take one of these quotes here and I want to use that in my marketing material. So that's something that can be quite interesting for your marketing team.
Steve, would be a
Yep.
way of filtering for the volunteers' feedback by date. I mean, because we tend to get a feedback like for our monthly reports.
You can sort them by date here.
Yeah, you can sort by date, but when downloading, you're gonna download the whole database of feedback, right? And then maybe filtering on Excel by date.
Yeah. You mean you'd have to filter by date, or just sort by date in Excel and just delete the ones you don't want, I suppose. But I see. I mean, I'll ask them. I'll mention it whether they can put in a filter option on there for date by date.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, feedback. Okay. Yeah, so that can be good for marketing material. Geographical reports. The next one covered. So maps, another way of saying it. So these can be good for spotting like areas where you've got loads of opportunities and no volunteers. Well, I got an opportunity there. Have we got anything in Manchester? Yeah, I did. Oh, opportunities all over. So where I've got a load of opportunities but no volunteers, or where I've got loads of volunteers and no opportunities. And both of those things we can usually do something about. If I've got a load of opportunities in an area and no volunteers, then I might ask the question, well, is there any way I can recruit volunteers from that area? Because there's opportunities right on their doorstep. There's any colleges in that area, any universities in that area, anything I can turn up for a freshers fair or visit a school or college or something like that, and try and drum up some volunteers there. Or the role reversal might be, okay, I've got a load of volunteers in that area, but no opportunities. Okay, well, is there any potential providers that live in that area? What kind of organizations are around that area? Maybe some of them would require some volunteering, for example. When you click on opportunities on here, we can even see how many volunteers are on those opportunity. Event helper, 1 volunteer. And I can even map them as well. It shows me where that volunteer has come from. That's the volunteer there who was on that opportunity. If I say show me all volunteers, it lets me zoom in, obviously, to a point where I start seeing individual volunteers, and then it shows me who they are. So I'm drilling down into the data here. Okay, so good for spotting those areas, like I say, where there's not enough volunteers or not enough opportunities. Okay. And I suppose it shows you how far volunteers are willing to travel, but it can have its uses as well. Custom areas. Sometimes people want to report on specific geographical areas which are not kind of known within the system. So I touched on this before when we went to the volunteer search page, and I was saying, oh, you could search for volunteers from this postcode or this postcode, okay, which is good, and you're defining a geographical area. Or you could say, show me all volunteers who are from Manchester. And the system can answer that question because your understanding of what Manchester is the same as mine. And importantly, it's the same as Google's. But there's certain areas where you might say, well, there's no definition for this really. We have a definition. My organization has a definition, but it's not known out there. Google doesn't know it. Things like a socially deprived area. It's a good example of that. Well, Google doesn't know what you mean by socially deprived area. You might have within your organization, people who live in the city center area here and these postcodes, they're all socially deprived areas. So what you can do is you can specify that exact area. You can define that exact area, and then you can use it within here to say, show me all volunteers where the area is a low income area. Okay, I'm searching, it will show you all volunteers from that low income area. Okay. So obviously that's very useful. But how do you define those areas? Well, first of all, you have to tell the system what you mean by that low income area. What postcodes does that incorporate? And you do that via the setup custom areas down here. Okay. And essentially what you can do is you're downloading a spreadsheet. It's all within the manual, the help manual for this training course. But essentially you're downloading a spreadsheet of all the postcodes in the UK, and then you're putting a name next to them, you know, wherever it is. CV1 is low income area, CV2 low income area, CV3 middle income area, if you wanted to separate the two, for whatever reason. So you can specify those regions. And once you've done it, you upload the spreadsheet on the right hand side here. And then the system now knows what you mean by low income area and middle income area. And you'll be able to use it when saying volunteers page or even the opportunities page, show me all opportunities from a low income area. Okay. Does anyone here use custom areas? There's someone here about. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, thank you. Okay, we've got downloading data. So at any stage, you know, you're the data controllers. So we don't have any, you know, interest in doing anything with your data. And at any stage, you can download it. Sometimes if people want to do like kind of one-off reports, I'll say, you know, they could request a custom report from us, but quite often I'll say, well, because it's a cost, there's a cost incurred with getting us to create a report. It might just make more sense for you to download your data and just manipulate it in Excel. When you go down to download data, you can download all volunteer data, provider data, opportunity data, or maybe you want to download volunteer opportunity data, which is every volunteer and all the opportunities they're on. It's like a combination of the two. Okay. So you can always download this information to Excel if need be. Custom reports, I've just mentioned them before. If you do want to raise a custom report, you can put a custom report request via this page here. The way that works is if you have like a recurring report that you have to do and you say, you know what, every month I've got to get the same information out and I can download it to Excel, but it takes me about an hour to mess around doing it. And really, I'd rather pay the £250, is what it is plus that, just to have a report waiting there. So I click on it and it's just there in real time every time I go to it. That's something you can do via a custom report. Okay. Finally, before we go on to this little exercise, common data issues. So issues that when people are looking at data and analyzing data that I tend to see recurring. One of them is the definition of active volunteers. Okay? And it's quite often it's the definitions of words. So make sure you use some help tips when you are actually looking at these reports and looking at the data. And if you're creating even custom reports as well for us, I often see columns appearing and it says, oh, the person's active. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by active? So it's understanding, it's the devil's in the detail when it comes to analyzing data. It's understanding exactly what you mean by these particular column headings or particular fields that you're reporting on. Historic periods, that often catches people out. So what I mean by that is someone's saying, okay, I want to know how many volunteer hours have been reported each month. So what they do is they get to the first day of the month and they say, okay, what happened last month? And they'll go and look in there and they'll run a report for how many hours were logged last month. And they'll say, brilliant. And they'll record that on a spreadsheet somewhere. And they'll be showing that to the powers that be. Okay. And then they'll go to the next month and they'll look on the spreadsheet and then the figures for last month have changed. And they'll be like, why has it changed? I've already recorded that and the board have already seen those figures. It's changed though. And the reason it's changed is because people can log hours for historic periods. I could go, you know, you can log hours for not just for things that happened yesterday. I could log hours for an opportunity that was on there a month and a half ago. Okay, so which means that your logged hours for last month can also change. So you're always only taking a snapshot in time when you're looking at this information. Okay, but even historical information can change. Okay, not all of it, obviously. You know, the number of opportunities created last month, that can't change. You know, there was a number which was created, and once that passed, that's it. They're created in the next month. But especially with logging hours, historical data can change. So be aware of that. And the final thing that I see people have issues with is reconciling totals to breakdowns. Like they will often I understand the thinking, and the thinking's perfectly fine. That the logic behind it, where they will say, okay, if I look at the number of volunteers on the system, and it's 37, got 37 registered volunteers on the system. Then I look at the ethnicities, and I add up all the ethnicities, and it only comes to 35. You're like, why is that? How is that the case? And you're right, it makes sense that everyone should have an ethnicity stored in there, but sometimes there may not be. Maybe you've changed over the ethnicities at some stage, and there's a new list there, and there's 2 that don't have any ethnicities recorded against them. So sometimes you find the total does not match the makeup for ethnicities or ages or this, that, and the other. And there's always a valid reason for it, but it's just getting to the bottom of what that reason is. They're the kind of 3 things that people see people struggling with. Okay, well, we're going to do this exercise. Is there any questions over what I've covered there today? No, good.
I've got a couple of questions about the email side of things, if that's okay. Is now a good time for that?
Yeah, sure.
So one of them was when we were looking at the failure report and that list of volunteers, you can see what emails they've opted into. Is there a report somewhere to find out what emails all volunteers have opted into?
You can do it on the, that is a very good question. You can do it on the search. You do it on the search filters page. There's a filter on here called type. That's something I was going to mention before, called type, which actually includes, it's mentioned in the manual that I sent over this morning, but actually includes a kind of a subcategory of different filters, and you're going to see them now. Okay, which include things like things like you were mentioning there about opted in and out of bulk emails, it being one of them. Okay, so you could probably filter a lot of them out using that. I'm not sure if there's any, probably some stuff in these filters here. That's one of them, I know. So you can opt in and out of receiving bulk emails. So bulk email page. I don't know if there's any others. So I'll have a look at that. My first place point of call. I'm not sure if you download the data to Excel, whether it's on there as well as separate columns. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll have a look into it.
And then also on emails, so when we look at the activity screen, we've got the emails that have come in over the last 30 days, but then after the 30 days they get knocked off. Is there a way to find them in a report as well, like the emails that have come through the system?
Yeah, if you went to messaging and email, sent email search, do you want to see emails that you've sent out in the last 30 days?
Ones that have like come in through the inbox to us.
That's a good question. So I know you can find it obviously specific to specific volunteers or providers. Can you just see a full list of them? I'm not sure. Hang on at the end, and I'll have a look into that in a bit more detail. I'm sure there probably will be a way. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Email received report. Okay. Right. So the final thing is we're going to have a quick look at this exercise. Is everyone okay? I'm just going to stop the recording now because this exercise is not really something that I need to record.
Sorry, Steve, can I just ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Someone mentioned earlier, because I've only just started to do this on the system, so I wasn't sure if I could run a report on this, but I've just started to add all of the training that the volunteers have done onto their profiles and add expiry dates in. Can you run a report from the system? And where would I find that? Again,
if you just go into volunteer management, down to the volunteers page, and there's qualifications is in here.
Oh, it is in there. Brilliant.
And
I can see it.
So you can do it from there, yeah.
Oh, fab. Thank you very much.
That's quite a common one. I would recommend using that smart views thing over here for it. Let's save it.
Right, yeah, put it as
something
a filter.
I've seen that one up and quite a lot of people say, I want to know which qualifications are ending this month in the next 30 days. And you save it as a smart view over here, then you can bring it up.
That's great. Thank you.
So it's smart view. What does it give you?
It's smart view, essentially a list of all your
things you're looking at all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, saved.
So for that example there, then I think that's probably something you should do at the start of every single month. So in which case, well, a week or whatever, it's like a timely fashion. In which case, it makes sense to say, show me all volunteers where the qualifications are about to end in the next 30 days, and then save that over here as qualifications.
Yeah.
You get it, ending, blah blah blah, and then you can just jump to it every time. Yep, and then find out, get in touch with those volunteers, and get the qualifications renewed.